Hello and welcome to Wellness Live. My name is Dr. Olivia Moses, and this broadcast is brought to you by Loma University Health's Living Whole Wellness Department. Thank you so much, and if you're watching us live, please know that you can ask questions right to our guest today. Well, today we're going to be talking about something that is actually really important, and that's relationships. Relationships can be the difference between having a good day and having a bad day. It could be the difference between enjoying work and just dreading going to work. So, important conversations to build relationships are important to all of us, whether it is in our personal lives or professional lives. So today we have a very special guest with us, and I cannot be more excited to introduce you to Teresa Davis. She is the Executive Director of our Human Resources Management Department right here at Loma University Health, and she is a wealth of knowledge when it comes to work relationships. She's been with the organization 16 years, and she's going to talk a little bit with us about how to have those important conversations, sometimes even conversations we don't necessarily want to have, but are really important to have when we are needing a better relationship, better outcomes, and maybe even a better environment for everyone that we work with. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Teresa Davis.
Thank you so much, Dr. Moses, for having me with you today. I'm excited to share some information with everyone who's tuned in. I will go ahead and start by sharing my screen. All right, how is that?
Great.
Perfect. So today we're going to talk through mastering some conflict resolution and the communication items that we need to keep in mind as we do this. It's very important, I think, from a personal standpoint, from a work standpoint, and even for your children in school. Being able to master these things is definitely something we can utilize in all facets of our life. So in this class today, we're going to talk about the importance of conflict resolution, some of the techniques to navigate some tough conversations, and then strategies that we can use in order to build strong workplace and personal relationships as well. So why is conflict resolution important? I would have to say, why do we think that it isn't important? Because there are so many pieces that conflict resolution hits for us. And one of those places that it is impactful is in team collaboration. Teams, your own personal team that you may lead, teams within the organization you serve, and isn't your home life a team as well? And so it does impact us there, as well as enhancing mutual understanding. Getting through conflict resolution and great communication skills helps with also effective communication. It does build trust and respect. It reduces stress for sure. It improves productivity, and it really does promote personal self-growth of your own leadership capabilities. So let's take a look a little bit further into understanding conflict. So it's a natural part of our day-to-day interactions. It arises when we have differing opinions, differing values, or interests. You can see it arise there. It's also, when you have effective conflict resolution, it definitely maintains healthy relationships. So what are the types of conflict that we see? There's interpersonal conflict, and this is where you have two or more individuals and possibly differing opinions, values, interests. And in this type of setting, This type of conflict definitely happens in all areas where we end up having conversations, crucial conversations and otherwise, and it can definitely impact those. Intrapersonal conflict is our own internal struggle. It may have to do with the same things of interest, beliefs. It definitely has to do with our emotions. It has to do with our desires. And this type of a conflict can also affect our decision making, and it can affect our own personal growth. We allow those things to take over and not overcome and work with how to resolve the interpersonal conflicts. They can affect your work life and your home life. The one we see most in a business environment or workplace is organizational or workplace conflict. And this does occur within your organization, and it results or it can result from disagreements, misunderstandings of teams due to very much those same things that we've talked about. Needs, beliefs, resources, relationships, all of these things can impact workplace conflict. And it actually can impact the organization's productivity and workplace harmony. And so that one's a big one that in order to master, because it does impact the organization, the people you work with, and yourself. Now, intergroup conflict, we may not see in our workplace every day. We see it a lot on TV, in the news. The intergroup conflicts, they are disagreements, confrontations between different groups having to do with, and sometimes involving physical violence, psychological tension, some of these things that arise from discord. And they can lead to prejudice as well as reduced cooperation between the groups. So I'm going to pause real quick and stop sharing. This is our little halfway point that I think we might want some questions and answers.
Thank you, Teresa. Breaking down the different types of conflict, I think can be very helpful because sometimes when we just lump it up into one, it is hard to kind of address it appropriately. So we have some questions coming through. The first question we have is, what are common mistakes people often make when attempting to resolve workplace conflicts?
What I've seen is being able to step back, and we're going to actually go into it further in some of the next slides, is not being able to listen, hear the other person's view, not being able to sometimes get outside of our own head and our own agenda, which can stop us from being able to hear and listen, and then understanding that it's not your way or my way. Usually communication and conflict resolution occurs when you're able to come to a mutual understanding and agreement of maybe somewhere in the middle. And so being open to your side and the other person's side in order to get to a good place together of resolution.
That makes sense. So we have to it's not us versus them, but it's us versus the problem.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. Another question is, what are some practical ways to rebuild team morale and trust after a major conflict?
That's a good one because sometimes when trust is lost, you really have to be intentional in taking steps to regain that trust. I think conversations around it, I think transparency around what went wrong if trust was lost, and not trying to spin or use your communication to spin what occurred. But if something happens, I tell my team this all the time. If I did something or said something wrong that landed wrong, let me know. And we should do that in groups as well. If we have conflict and communication issues and trust is lost, go back to the group, go back to the person and own what happened if it lands on you and that trust is lost with you. That transparency and saying, I'm sorry, here's what went wrong, here's what I'll do next time, that really ends up being a game changer.
Well, it sounds like what you're saying is that honesty is the best policy kind of in this situation, because if you're not honest, you keep it in, it kind of festers, it grows into something it really doesn't need to be. So to be
Absolutely.
honest and transparent. No, that's great.
Absolutely.
Can we talk a little bit about that intra conflict that you kind of were talking about? And I don't think we talk about that enough. How does not working on the conflict within present itself sometimes? And how do we address the other person when it seems like this is something more coming from themselves?
Yes, and that's a great question. I've learned it only through I'm an avid reader. I love books. There's a ton of books on communication and conflict resolution. One of my favorites is Crucial Conversations, the book. And where it starts is start with heart. I think that to get outside of our own minds in order to get to a place where we can communicate well and we can hear what the other person is saying, we have to put aside what our agenda is. So there's no agenda, there's nothing going on there. We're on the same, level playing field. We're both bringing ideas to the table. I want resolution. I want this person to get resolution, regardless of what I want to happen. I'm not going into this conversation knowing maybe I do have a personal conflict with them. That's got to go by the wayside, because what we're trying to do is to come into the conversation for a resolution and to resolve something that's going on. And I think it's hard to do. It's really hard to do sometimes. But in order to just sit and listen without your personal emotions taking over is not easy. But if you can master it, even in the moment, pause a second, take a deep breath, and even some of the communication skills of the active listening, being able to, repeat what it is you're hearing so that you're hearing yourself say it and they can validate what it is. And so being present and doing those things gets you out of the intrapersonal conflicts that you have going on as you focus with heart on that resolution, moving forward.
No, you make a good point, Teresa, because what it also sounds like is that this is like with any important skill, it takes deliberate, active, practice, and not only practice, but it takes some time. So be what would you say? Patient with yourself as you get that practice down.
Absolutely. And I still have to work on it. I mean, I think it's always a work in progress. Feelings sometimes take over and emotions just take over. And as you practice it more, being able to pause and reset the conversation, and people absolutely are open to all of that. Even if you come to the conversation a little single-minded and you're hearing yourself, being able to pause, start those active listening traits or characteristics, and you can get to a better place mid-conversation.
Yeah. Oh, this takes such discipline, as well. So, what are I mean, I think it's normal for us as human beings to mirror or to throw back what you're getting. So, if someone is coming at you a bit aggressive or maybe accusing you, you kind of get back to them with that same type of, response or energy. How do you stop that from happening? Because I mean, I think it's so natural for us.
It's that fight or flight kind
Yes.
of thing. We go to fight. If you're coming with aggression, I'm coming back with
Mhm.
equal aggression. But I have found that if you have the ability to hear what's going on in your own voice, and knowing that, usually if you're feeling that, your body's telling you something too. Your heart's racing, you're starting to sweat, your throat is dry. And if when you realize those things are happening, take a pause, a deep breath. Pause is hard. Like, even if you just pause for 2 seconds, that's forever. And it just feels like it goes on forever. And just, say, you are able to just say, give me a second, take a couple deep breaths, You can even use taking a sip of water as time to regroup with yourself, and then go to the active listening. Let me make sure I'm hearing what you're saying. What I heard you just say was, and you list the points. Did I miss anything? Okay, here's where I'm at with that. I list my points. Where can we, and did I miss anything? You know, do we both agree that that's where we are? Okay, where can we find the center point? Where can we find an agreement between these two, you know, that we have the sides that we're on to get to the middle of agreement? And that's hard. It is hard, or because that person is pushing back so hard, many times there is a shutdown. And then they end the meeting. It could be with your employees. It could be with another person. The person or where we're trying to get to, which is resolution, doesn't happen because either party can't get past that communication barrier.
It sounds like also that silence is okay for little bits of time. You know, sometimes you want to fill the silence, but it's okay to take a breath and get a drink of water and have that silence. And sometimes we're scared of silence, I think, in some.
It's true. It's true. I think in interviewing, I learned, you know, ask the question and just pause, because the silence is uncomfortable for us, not them. Thinking they're waiting to give their answer, and that's okay too.
Right. Well, why don't we get to the second half of your presentation?
Okay, that sounds good. Let me just reshare my screen. Oh. And I apologize, it went back to the beginning, so let me get back to where we were.
No worries. And while you're doing that, why don't I remind our audience, if you're watching us live, go ahead and type in your questions for Teresa and we can ask them live right on air.
That sounds good. Okay. So we did get to speak to some of these strategies, conflict resolution strategies, and I think sometimes they happen naturally, but knowing them and going through them to really understand these strategies is helpful to get you to that point to consistently be able to do these things. So I did mention a few times active listening, and that's, you know, definitely requires your full attention. So if you're multitasking, if you're in a conversation or a Zoom environment where you're in a conversation and you're multitasking, there's a text going on, or there's, you know, you had this flash email that come up or anything else like that, you're not actively listening. And then it does show through both verbal and nonverbal cues that you are listening. And it's the asking back, you know, here's what I hear you saying. Did I miss anything? That's a cue of active listening that you can use, and it is crucial for making sure that you resolve conflicts. So being able to do that is a very important piece and a great strategy, an important strategy. Empathy is a big one. Being in the other person's shoes is a lot of what empathy is in a conflict resolution. It is through that active listening that you're able to be in their shoes, make sure you're understanding where they're coming from. And it gets us to that mutually agreeable solution, and also validating if there are any feelings or emotions, because it's the feelings and emotions that halts communication a lot of times. So if we can demonstrate empathy, a lot of times it takes the heat out of the room. It takes down the tone of the conversation to a place where we're feeling heard, and the person that we're working with, we're both getting what we need. And I think that's an important piece. So assertiveness as a strategy, and this one can be misunderstood at times to aggressiveness. Assertiveness does not mean aggressiveness. I think that during conflict, if you are able to maintain a open communication, dialogue, active listening, empathy, all of those things, and get your point across. Not just stop the conversation because it's not going my way, not allow the conversation to be diverted into another direction, but to state in your points what it is you're looking to get in the conversation is important. And that's the assertiveness piece. And then, of course, problem solving as a strategy, coming to the table with a mindset of solving the problem, not just sharing your stance and hearing theirs on a situation, but making sure you're coming to the table with the mindset of problem solving and making sure that any underlying issues, anything that may go wrong here, we put on the table. Here are the things we want. Well, here, let's talk about maybe some of the barriers and how we can maybe address them going forward. So going into those conversations or resolutions with that mindset is important. And then also utilizing the skill or the strategy of negotiation. Problem solving always includes negotiation. We talked about it a couple of times, Olivia. It's not your side or my side, but what's the side that will get us to a good place for those that we serve? It is a collaborative approach to conflict resolution, and it's the best because it keeps you in a great place with the person you may be in conflict with. And it also is that negotiation is a skill in any environment, any work environment. And the negotiation of, it's not what I want and you want, but the negotiation of let's come to an understanding of what's best for all. All right. So in navigating tough conversations, here are some really good points to make prior to the conversation. I think we know a lot of times that it's going to be a tough conversation. And we know ahead that there are some emotions surrounding a conversation that's going to come up. And we're preparing, right? We don't want the armor, but we want to make sure we come to the table open. And so prepare for the conversation. Sometimes something as simple as your own talking points. What are the bullets? What are the things that you want to make sure that you share? And what are the conflicts you think that may crop up? And then make sure that you're staying calm and composed. Not allowing the conversation to go out of hand. And if it does, being able to take a breath, pause a second, take a drink of water, and get back to the place of starting with heart, making sure you're coming to the table with all the strategies that we talked about, open-mindedness, being able to share, being able to actively listen, focusing on the issue and not the person. If you have an interpersonal conflict, that you can get resolution to a situation as long as you're focusing on just the issue and not the person. Utilizing I statements is another big piece when you're expressing your feelings, not here's what you are doing, or you always, or you usually. Those things aren't helpful, but if you're putting it on yourself, it creates a natural collaboration because we're not blaming in this situation. We're just sharing what we feel. And it's hard to combat a person when they're sharing their own feelings. And then, of course, to seek common ground. We're wanting to make sure we get to common ground. So in building strong workplace bonds, again, we want to foster open communication. It's that active listening piece. We want to encourage our teams and our inner teams, as well as teams across the organization, encouraging collaboration and teamwork. And we want to, in these environments, every time we can, to recognize and appreciate all of the contributions of those involved. And then it ends up promoting a positive work environment. If we're the leaders of this happening, then the next leader who we resolved a conflict in this way goes, oh, that was good. I liked how they did that. And they start using it. And we can coach and mentor our peers, those that are those that we serve on teams, anyone else, I am thankful that someone worked with me and coached and mentored me on these skills, because it's helped me over time as well, and it's helped me grow personally. And then also, in conclusion, just the effective conflict resolution is key to building strong workplace bonds, but I would even push it even further, that personal conflict resolution, school resolution, resolution with our children, all of those things, conflict resolution is going to come in all areas, and utilizing those skills is important anywhere. Mastering these skills, you're able to navigate those tough conversations and foster those positive interactions that are happening. It will assist you in all of those things. And so I appreciate the time that you've given, and I just have one more plug, and I don't get paid for this, but this is a great resource, and we've done some lunch and learns before on this, but Crucial Conversations is, it talks about personal relationships and improving conflicts in the workplace, in your community. It does a lot of things at that point to assist. So it's a great resource as well. So, and thank you again, all. I think we have more questions that are going to come up.
Yes, thank you so much, Teresa. This has been hugely helpful and I think insightful. We have a few questions coming through. One of them is, how should I approach conflict with someone who shuts down or avoids difficult conversations?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's usually something behind it, and you can visibly see when someone's shutting down. Many times it could be a trust slash safety issue. They don't feel safe, and so they may not trust to open up to you in order to share or continue the conversation. Transparency, honesty is always going to be good. I think when you see it, and you will see it, we just don't know how to deal with it. When you see it, pause, stop that portion of your conversation and address it very openly, honesty, and with empathy. I feel or I see you're either in distress or you've kind of shut down. Help me understand about what you're feeling right now. Are you willing to share with me what you're feeling right now? Because that's part of all conflict resolution. Even an intrapersonal, we have our own emotions that go on. And it would be great if people could see when you're shutting down. And if someone said, hey, I'm noticing you're kind of shutting down. Here's what I'm getting. Talk to me about that. I think I have found when I do that, we can get past the emotion and get to a place of continuing a conversation and getting to conflict resolution.
No, so call it out when you see it. I love that.
Absolutely. Who doesn't want to know that you care about my feelings? Everyone wants to know that you care about my feelings, but we're uncomfortable with it many times.
Right. We have another question. How can I work on regulating my emotions when conflict feels personal or even triggering?
Absolutely. And many of the strategies that we provided, knowing ahead of time what those conflicts may be, understanding your own triggers, to make sure that when you hear or see them, pause, take that couple of seconds, take a drink of water, and remember why you're in the conversation. Don't allow anyone to pull you outside of that, and outside of what you were there for. And it's a communication to get to resolution of a conflict or to get to an understanding of something. Stay in that, even if you have to pause a second and go off camera or walk out real quick I just need a quick sip of water. Can I be right back? Allowing that time and space to get a hold of yourself and be able to, get to a better place where you can engage from the heart and be able to get to a place of resolution.
Right. And they will always try to bring you out of it. So, it's your job. That's a responsibility and control you can take. So I love that.
Absolutely.
The last question, Teresa, that we have for today is when is it time or appropriate to get a third party involved, such as HR or such as, even in your family, to get another family in there, and when is it that time? Because sometimes it might seem overwhelming and you've tried. Is it appropriate and when?
I love that question. Um, I our team maintain that the best place to resolve conflict is at the source. So if you have a conflict with your boss, if you have a conflict with a coworker, the best place to resolve that is one-to-one. Let's manage that through being able to work through the strategies and get to a place where we can understand. Because if you involve a third party like HR, you've lost trust. Losing that trust is really hard to gain back because then it becomes an us and them situation, and having to bring someone in to resolve it is harder on your relationship. If you could resolve it together by coming to a mutual understanding or agreement, then there's so much trust that's built, and I guarantee you they're going to tell everyone else about that too. Just like they'll tell everyone else of, if my boss is horrible, I'm going to get HR. Even in her family, if you and I, if me, myself and my aunt, myself and my cousin, my brother and my sister, whoever else, my husband and I, if we can't resolve our conflicts by yeah, needing to bring in a third party. Wow, that's tough because there's going to be conflicts that occur and there may not be a third party available. And so utilizing and finding those strategies and skills for effective communication and conflict resolution will definitely be a better place if you're able to do it in the moment with that person. But there are occasions when a third party needs to happen. And what our attempt to do is work with both sides in order to get to that same mutual understanding, and then coaching both the employee. Here's how you may want to do it next time, it doesn't have to involve us. Your boss is more than open to a conversation, and here are some skills to do that. And the same thing for the leader. Here's something that you can do the next time a conflict arises so that the employee doesn't feel HR is needed. Most of the time they bring in HR, employees bring in HR because they don't feel heard, validated, or that the resolution was what they wanted. And it may not be, but there's a way to get to an understanding of why or why not it could or could not be their way.
Well, thank you so much, Teresa, for your time today. We are so happy that you donated your time on this extremely important topic that actually can help all of us. And I wanted to thank each one of our viewers for joining us today for Wellness Live. We meet here every single month, the last Thursday at noon Pacific Standard Time. So you won't want to miss next month's, where we're talking to David Lopez about CPR and those life-saving measures. So we'll see you next time. My name is Dr. Moses.